Did you know that each year around 3 pounds of pesticides are used per person? That's about a bag of apples or oranges, or this juice container if full. What if I were to tell you that there was another way to manage pests without all the pesticides? The natural forms of pest control include crop rotation, polyculture, and biological pest controls. My mom owned her own plant business for about 8 years while I was growing up. I would spend all my spare time outside working with the plants, and that also meant the pests that followed. I saw how damaging pests can be to plants, woody, or perennial, so I can imagine how hard it is to control them for a whole field of crops. I think anyone who owns a garden can relate to how difficult it can be at times. You put all this time and effort into making your garden beautiful, and then overnight a pest can come and destroy it all. Therefore, if you're more inclined to natural remedies and such, natural pest controls are the way to go. The first type of natural pest control that is very easy to use is called crop rotation. Not only is it a natural pest repellent, but it also has many other benefits. One of the first most important benefits is that it does control pests. This method works depending on the type of life cycle for the pest. For example, the pest must spend the period from the end of one crop to the beginning of the new crop in low mobility status, meaning that they are basically hibernating between the crop seasons. An online source called Nationwide states, the most important thing about crop rotation is that when you're rotating crops to include non-host crops. These are crops that aren't attacked by a particular pest that you are trying to get rid of. Planting these crops in between the others can deter the pests from coming back to the location. Wallander states, while 82 to 94% of most crops are grown in some sort of rotation, conservation crop rotations that incorporate cover crops remain rare. Only about 3 to 7% of farms use cover crops in rotations. So while it is being used today, more uses of cover crop rotations could be used for pest control. Some other benefits of crop rotation include preventing buildup of pathogens in soil, and then like my mom stated in our interview, it prevents soil depletion, reduces soil erosion, and also reduces pest buildup. You can even do crop rotations in small vegetable gardens at home to prevent pests from coming back to the same patch of one vegetable year after year. It also helps with keeping the soil healthy. Did you know that studies have shown that plants that grow near other species of plants are able to fight off bacteria and pests faster than plants that are by themselves in what are called monoculture land plots? That brings us to our second point. Polyculture is the use of permaculture, which is growing more than one kind of crop in a field to fight pests. Another online source called Practical Plants helps explain this when they said, not only is this more economical, but it is also super practical. This is one of the easiest ways to fight pests naturally. They call crops that you plant to attract the pests away from the main crops trap crops. That way the other important crops can still be harvested and unaffected by the pests. This also produces less waste and is a better utilization of resources. The third way of controlling pests naturally is biologically. To control pests biologically means to control the pests with other organisms. I read a great example from Barbara Pleasant, who wrote a book on organic pest control. One example of this is using soap and applying this soap to plants, and that will deter the pests from coming back to those plants. It also can attract other insects by planting flowers and herbs around it, and that will get rid of the pests that come. Several readers noted the ability of sweet alyssum and other flowers to attract hoverflies, which eat the aphids, which is what she was talking about in her example. There are many types of biological control, but some of the common types include augmentation, which is the release of natural enemies, conservation, which is conserving of the existing natural enemies and pests, parasites, and combination, which is parasites and pathogens. Although I have mostly just gone through and talked about the positive effects of natural pest control techniques, there are some downsides to those as well, and I think it would be unfair if I didn't share those too. But don't let these discourage you from trying these methods, because even though they might be hard to use sometimes, they're well worth it. For example, Using biological pest control requires human input at times, meaning that you have to place the organisms and then sometimes watch over them to make sure that they don't become the pests themselves. Also, to make sure you choose the right organisms to control your pests. If not, the brave could become the burden. Also, with crop rotation, not always is adding a bodyguard enough to fight off the pests. This meaning you wasted seed, money, and you still have unwanted pests devouring your crops. In closing, keep in mind all the other options that are at your fingertips. It's not bad to use chemicals if used properly, but if you're looking for some alternative options, just remember there are plenty of natural options. Just 3 of those ways are rotating your crops, planting multiple crops in one area, and using other organisms to fight those pesky pests. Now just imagine going from 3 pounds of pesticides on vegetables to none and controlling pests 100% naturally. Thank you for your time.